ภะคะวันตังสัทธามังสัสสังฆังอิเมหิสัคขะเอหิยะถาวะหังอาโอปิเตอิยาภิปุจยามะสาธุโนปันเตภะคะวะสุชิระปารินิพพุโตภิภาชิมาจนะทานึคัมภมานะสาอิเมสัคคาเรตุกะตะภานาคาลพุเตปาติกันหาตุอัมหาคาติคาวทัสสิทายาสุขายาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวะพุทธังภะคะวันตังอะภิวาเทสวากขาโตภะคะวะโตธัมโมธัมมังนัมมัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธอิจาจารณะสัมปันโนสุขโตโลกวิทูอนุตตโรปุริสธรรมสารถิสัทธาเทวมนุษย์สานังพุทโธภะคะวะอะระหังภะคะวันตังอะภิปุจยามิธัมมังภะคะวันตังศิรสสะนามามิสุวากขาโตภะคะวะโตธัมโมสันทิติโกอัคคาลิโกเอหิปัสสิโกโอภานายิโกปัจจตังเวทิตาโพวินิโรหิธรรมหังธัมมังอภิปุจยามิธัมมังธัมมังศิรสานามาสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆอุจุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆยายาปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโต ธิดัญชาไทยปุริสายุรานิอาตาปุริสาปุกาลาเอสาภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆอาหุเนโยอาหุเนโยสัพพิเนโยอัญชลิกรณิโยอนุตตรังปุญญาเขตังโลกัสสะธัมมังสังฆังอภิปูชยามิธัมมังสังฆังอิรัสสะนามามิ
This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, not busy with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be happy. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be happy. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, freed from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be having clarity of vision, being free from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. Now we have the basket case questions. Very good. Ooh, they're getting bigger, bigger. Okie dokie, here we go. Thank you. Dear Ajahn Brahm, when will we have a Jhana Grove Meditation Retreat Center in Hong Kong? I have a rule over in the Bodhinyana Monastery. When anybody has an idea, and it's a good idea, then they've got to do it. So, unfortunately, you wrote your name down here. So, well, I expect next year. No, Jhana Grove. Got Jhana Grove Retreat Center in Hong Kong. So just do it. But anyway, if you go to Hong Kong, there's lots of islands there. So just go and do it. I'd like to believe that what we do affects little on our future. At most, things are mentally formed. But I find myself still worry a lot, even as I think that's not right, wise. It always feels like a second nature to worry. I try being kind, but sometimes in daily life the worry is more intense than kindness, and I feel helpless instead. Or it's calm for a few moments and it's back to old habits. Any advice on this, please? Oh, that sometimes we just got into the we've got into the habit of worrying. So what to do? Get a worry book, a bit of paper, and when you have a worry about something which is going to go terribly wrong, write it down. And at the end of the week or the month, see if you can count how many times that what you worried might happen actually did happen. So you can find out what a waste of time it is to worry. Because what you think might happen, it never happens. It's usually something much worse. It's not much worse. But whatever happens, whatever you have to worry about, in the end, you find that life goes on. Worry, you don't worry. And of course, the key story, I've told it before, I think the first night here, when that fellow teacher was a soldier in the British Army during the Second World War in Burma, and he was in the jungles, wandered into just a large number of Japanese troops, totally surrounded, totally outnumbered, and prepared himself to die. But he thought, instead of just dying, at least we can fight our way out. The real thing to do. So he wanted to fight his way out, but the captain said, no way, sit down. This is an order. You have to have a cup of tea. Because the British Army, they like their cups of tea. In fact, they probably won many wars by getting cups of tea. I always thought that, if the Adolf Hitler, if he really wanted to defeat England, he should have not bombed the airfields. He should have just sent all his aircraft to India, Sri Lanka, bombed all the tea plantations, and when the English ran out of tea, they'd have given up within a week. Their strategy was all wrong. But anyway, and even Ajahn Chah, you know, Ajahn Chah, he went to England, and then afterwards I remember asking him, did you learn any English words when you were over in London? He said yes. You know, he said this in Thai. He only learned one English word. You know what it was? Cup of tea. Cup of tea. Have a cup of tea. Cup of tea. But anyway, so the British Army, they had to sit down and make a cup of tea. How can you do that when you're in the jungle about to die? This is war. Not messing around. This means business. But they thought, okay, well, I'm going to have a cup of tea. Probably the last thing I'd ever do in my life. Just have a cup of tea. Well, it's a silly thing to do, but orders are orders. But in the time it took them to drink the tea, the enemy moved. They were sitting down, the scout came back, and I remember him telling me this. Guys, put your things away quickly. Surrounding soldiers and move. There's a way through. Come, quick, quietly. And of course, every one of those escaped. Every one of those soldiers. Which is why he could tell me the story years later. He said he owed his life to the wisdom of that captain. He said not once, but several times later on in life he had cancer. Incurable. Like the enemy just circling around, no way out. But, you know, he just carried on, and a little treatment here, a bit of exercise there, change of diets, and he got through the cancer. He survived. So often in life, we look, and whichever way we look, and there's no way out. It's death, ruin, there's humiliation, there's even worse. Every which way we look around, and there's no possibility. So what do? We sit down and have a cup of tea. Okay, you may not like tea. Have a coffee. Have a herbal drink. Have a glass of water. Anything. But not a whiskey. Please don't have a whiskey. And you sit down there, and when you're just relaxing, preserving your energies, not doing stupid things where you can't make any help, you make things worse. You just sit down there, relax, and wait. A hard thing to do, you know, when you're worried so much about what's happening. But you just have a cup of tea, enjoy the tea. And then afterwards you find things change. And that is where you take the opportunity to escape. So often in life that's the case. So you feel really terrible, you're awful, you're sick, nothing's working out. Oh, this is terrible. Just have a cup of tea. It's amazing how quickly life changes. Opportunities present themselves. That's actually what we do. So, that's why instead of worrying, have a cup of tea. See what happens next. Sometimes, I think it was His Holiness the Dalai Lama once said, if there's something you can do effectively, then worry about it. If there's nothing you can do, what's the point in worrying? It doesn't help anything at all. It just makes you more tired, more crazy, more of a problem for others and the ones you love. So, just wait. It's amazing in life just how things keep on changing. Opportunities come up. So that's how we can stop worrying. Dear Ajahn, why feelings suddenly can be so sad? Not anything can be really, really sad. It's about other thing or what happened about it. Oh, it's nice to be sad because, look, some people, they go to... Have you ever seen Titanic? Our love will go on. I know that song because I go to funerals, and that's the most favourite song in funerals here in Australia. I said, oh, it's so tragic, but our love will go on. No way. No, give the wife a few weeks and then she'll be going out with somebody else. Our love will go on. Anyway, can be so sad, and sometimes life is sad. So if it's really sad, enjoy it. Have your sad day. We have sad days once a week. It's called Saturday. Saturday? That was a joke. Saturday. You know, some people say, oh, why do we have Mother's Day, we have Father's Day. Why can't we have Children's Day? We do. Once a week. Sunday. It's really unfair for the girls. You'd have Daughter Day as well to make it fair. Just have Sunday. Mother's Day, Father's Day, and Sunday. 52 weeks a year, crikey. Anyway, Friday seems so sad. Yeah, you can check it. No, what day is the day? It's not Saturday, is it? Okay, so it's not Saturday. So why you feel suddenly so sad? It is, just enjoy sadness. If you do get sad, you can go and see the cooks. Oh, I feel very sad today. Oh, really, poor thing. What can I get you? You know, I feel so sad. Oh, see what there's in the kitchen. What would you like to eat? If you're really sad, you can get so many benefits from being sad. So many advantages. If you're happy, you don't need anything. So it's nice to be sad from time to time. And you get sympathy from other people. Even the poor teddy bear, I'm sad, and the teddy bear, oh, never mind, Ajahn Brahm. So, what you're doing there, you're not adding negativity to sadness. Sometimes you're just in a low mood, you've got low energy. And if you've got low energy, of course you're a little bit sad, but just relax. And of course the energy comes back. If you fight the sadness, I don't want to be sad. I'm not sad. I'm not sad. I'm not sad. I'm really upset. But so you don't fight things, you let them be, and you just go with the flow, and sadness doesn't last. Always like the negative psychology business. If you're sad, see if you're going to do anything, do it really properly. The old story, give it everything you've got. So if you're going to be sad, really go for it. So drink lots of water, to fill up, just like dogs do before they go touring around the neighborhood, and, because they mark their territory. Fill it all up so you've got lots of liquid inside you, then really go into being sad. But it's also the case, I don't know if it's with you, but here in this hall about 3 years ago, there was an Australian guy, maybe in his 40s, and he was meditating and he started crying. He was overcome with sadness and he did not know why. And he so sad and his tears started coming by. This is really weird, I don't cry. So he came to see him in interviews. He said, what's going on, Ajahn Brahm? So I asked him, an Australian guy, I said, when was the last time you cried? It was like the light bulb moment. He got very quiet and said, I was about 11 or 12. My daddy told me that Australian boys don't cry. I said, mate, you've got a lot of crying to catch up with. About 30 years worth. And he was sitting in here, he was crying so many times, he'd open his eyes, he'd be crying during the meditation. That's what he was doing, just, catching up. And he wasn't embarrassed at all. Because I told him, I said, look, sometimes people suppress their tears and now he's letting it out. And I think he was a single man. He was so popular with all the girls afterwards. So if any of you guys are looking for a partner, get some cry going, real crying. Oh, you poor thing. Oh, do you want to come home for a cup of coffee? Oh. I shouldn't tell you these tricks. How does monks know these tricks? I know psychology. So anyway, sometimes you're sad because, you didn't have time to cry when you really should have been crying. You just let it come out. Sometimes that's during the meditation. That might be the cause here, just suppress sadness and now in a safe place where you're relaxed, you can do your crying. Dear Ajahn Brahm, I feel somewhat ambivalent about the past. ambivalent about the past life regression therapy, which you mentioned. And it's not only about the expense, it's not that expensive to find out, because if you get into your past lives, and then you remember your past, you can remember where you put all the treasure. You can dig it up again and find out. You make a lot of money out of that, remember past lives. Find out what happened. Wouldn't it be nice to remember your past life, maybe in Dallas in 1961 or 2, you can find out who killed JFK. And you say, I was there. You can write a good book about past lives. It can be really interesting about your past lives, about the expense. But I know there was, sometimes you do remember your past lives. Be careful, don't tell too many people about it. Because there was this one case of, because I know this gentleman, he was a TV personality when I was a young man in England, Roy Hudd, a Huddy. And he used to work, I think they were contracted to the ITV, not the BBC. And anyway, so he was really quite popular, what they would call like a household name, sort of in the 60s, maybe early 70s. But he never made it big, but people would recognize him, a very funny man. But one evening he was performing at a theatre in London, and he wrote this article about what happened, that there was a new one-way system through London, and he got just totally lost. He couldn't find his way, his usual route back home. And getting lost, in a part of London he didn't usually go to, going this street, that street, he turned a corner in one of the streets, and he had this electrifying experience, the goosebumps all over, hairs on the back of his head, because he could remember this street from his previous life. Because everything just flooded back, because the streets in London, the architecture looks pretty much the same. They're not really allowed to change the facade of the building. They can just renovate inside and modernize, turn it into flats, but the outside is pretty much as it was. And so he can remember the street. And in London, if a famous person lived there, a reasonably well-known person, they put a little blue circle. And Sir Alexander Fleming just discovered penicillin here. I remember that, it's just outside Paddington Station. Or this was King Charles II's mistress, lived here. That's just outside Russell Square. And they have all these signs of who lived where. This is where Sir Winston Churchill lived. They have all these blue signs because it's fascinating. People know the history and they can go touring around, and had one of the signs outside his house. And I don't know why I knew this person, but as soon as I read the story, I said, I know that fellow. As a man, he was a music hall entertainer in the Edwardian times, 1910, 1920, around that time. Maybe I got it a bit wrong, just the turn of the 19th century, that's 1905 or something. And he was probably the most famous music hall entertainer ever, a gentleman called Dan, that's D-A-N, Leno, L-E-N-O. And he was really popular. And this guy, Roy Hudd, said that was me. And he knew everything about this gentleman, and he knocked on the house, on the door, and of course the occupants opened. I said, oh, Roy Hudd, what are you doing here? Because they saw him on the TV, they knew him. He said, I used to live here, I was Dan Leno. And they were just, really surprised. But, because he was a person they knew from the TV, they invited him inside, and he took them on a tour around their house, where it was before, and how it was before, and the renovations, and it was absolutely accurate. He had all this information about this guy, Dan Leno, because he was him before. And he wrote an article, and I remember reading that article. But I never knew afterwards what happened to this Roy Hudd. The head of that ITV was a very devout Catholic, and as soon as he saw the article in the newspaper, Roy Hudd got the sack. Said, he said, I don't believe in reincarnation, it can't happen. So he lost his career. But he did write a number of books on the life of Dan Leno. He became the authority on him. And people knew the reason why, because he could fill in many gaps because that was who he was before. But it was lost his career because of that. You can actually look him up in the Wikipedia or something. Roy Hudd, very easy to type in. It's only 7 letters, R-O-Y and H-U-D-D. You can see all of the stuff which he wrote on Dan Leno, because he was Dan Leno before. It's fascinating. So, sometimes he was an entertainer in his previous life. He was an entertainer in his present life. I think he might be still alive. He may have died. I'm not sure. But whatever, he wasn't quite up to the same degree of popularity as in his life as Dan Leno. But fascinating. The character carries on. And all he needed was just some trigger. Getting lost, wondering, my goodness, I remember this street. All the memories flooding back. Fascinating story. And also shows you don't get anything out of this. In fact, sometimes you lose status in your career. But nevertheless, it's the truth. You understand why things are happening. So, what if I found out that in my past life I was Pol Pot, Joseph Stalin, or the like? Very unlikely. Most people, actually to get someone who's reasonably famous is very rare. Most people, you're Mr. Joe Smith who lives around the corner. Not Joseph Stalin or the like. Would I responsible be culpable? Not at all. If so, would the guilt be unbearable? Not at all. On one view, some may be driven to suicide. Oh, impossible. Any comments on the above? I think that's worrying too much. A lot of times, how many Joseph Stalins and Pol Pot can you remember? Can there be? So most people are just ordinary people. Although, I don't mind telling interesting stories about reincarnation, rebirth. There was one person, actually I never met him, but he was in Thailand as a monk when I was a monk, a little bit senior to me. And apparently, and there's lots of confirming information, that he was a famous person in a previous life, a very famous Buddhist. And that was, I don't say this unless there was some really good arguments for this. It was Emperor Asoka. And the current, just died a few years ago, he was Ajahn Lee Dhammadhara, one of the forest monks, disciple of Ajahn Mun, who built a monastery called Asokarama in Samut Pragan, south of Thailand. And apparently, I don't mind saying these things now because he's dead, a lot of his disciples sort of led on that he was Asoka in a previous life. And you might say, well, yeah, but this was a very, very powerful monk. And also, one of the weirdest things, and this is in this Ajahn Lee Dhammadhara's museum, and it was attested to by many people, he was actually giving a talk in Ubon, Ajahn Chah's backyard, but not in Ajahn Chah's monastery. He was giving a talk in one of the big temples there, and from the roof, a medallion fell down from nowhere. Not like a medallion with a Buddha on it, a medallion with an image of Emperor Asoka. Ancient, with a form. They check it with the other forms over in India. And it was how that came to Thailand. It fell from a roof right in front of him. It's now in this museum. That was really spooky and freaky. Because that was a very famous person in Buddhist history. And it does seem to be there's many people, many, can't really tell who they are, really say that that was Emperor Asoka. Got reborn. It's very, very rare to find famous people. most of the time you're just ordinary people. So you won't find yourself to be Pol Pot. You won't find yourself, you can't be, because when did Pol Pot die? Pol Pot died must be, it's not that long ago, it was about 20, 30 years ago. So that's one thing you can tick off, you're not Pol Pot. Joseph Stalin, when did he die? That must have been 40, 50 years ago, after the Second World War. So, at least I can't be Joseph Stalin. Do I have a character similar to Joseph Stalin? I don't think so. So the chances are absolutely not. So you're fine. So it's nice sometimes you want to do past life regression. You'll find some interesting stuff, but not something which, you're really very notorious. So could you tell me more about how we choose our parents and how we create those conditions when we were reborn? Thank you. You know that sometimes that we are attracted, to our own family members from the past. There was, I love these little stories, this one fellow over in Sydney, and he told me that he had an auntie, and the auntie never got married. The auntie was a businesswoman, quite very successful, very wealthy, but hated two things in life. The two things she hated was, number one, religion. She thought all religions, religious people get a proper job, work hard like we do. All you ever want is donations. I don't like that. And the other people she didn't like donated to was the tax office. She hated paying tax. Those two things, giving to religion, giving to the tax office. So she'd do anything to get out of paying tax. But anyway, she was successful, lived in a mansion, but eventually, like everybody else, died. And so, of all of her children, the one who was the religious one, who was a Buddhist, was her nephew. And so, when they allocated, her wealth, the nephew only got a very small share of the inheritance. Everyone else got lots more, and it was her auntie or his auntie knew that he was a Buddhist, and so just giving him money, he'll probably just give it to the Buddhist temple. And I hate that. So he got very little, but he did get a few stuff, and especially the crockery. And after her auntie died, the wealthy auntie, a few months later his wife got pregnant, and of course when the baby was born, everyone came to see the baby. Oh, doesn't it look like your auntie who passed away? And of course they did have some features which looked very similar. But when the baby started to talk, that's when things got interesting, because he told me he was coming into his lounge room, just, with a cup of coffee, and the little kid went ballistic. Daddy, that's my cup. Daddy, give me my cup. And every time they went down the motorway, past the mansion, Daddy, I want to go to my house. I want to go to my house. But the most funny thing was that there was a big advertisement, a big billboard, and it was something to do with tax. And she said, it's only 2, 3-year-old, Daddy, what does tax mean? Oh, darling, whenever you get any money, any pocket money, you have to give a portion to the government. I'm not giving any of my pocket money to the government, said the little 2 or 3-year-old so fiercely. The characters from the past had continued on to this life. It was not they remembered stuff. And also the character hating paying tax, and the kid hated paying anything out of his pocket money. Characters go from life to life. So anyway, they choose the children Or the children choose the parents because sometimes you've still got some attraction there. You know, that's somebody you love very much. You'd love to be close, you know, to your mother or your father or grandparents who passed away. They want to be close to you. They can imagine just love some attraction of the familiar. If you can, sometimes we go back to those places. And this is where we get reborn. Often. But sometimes it's only if there's a womb available, basically. You can't maybe get that close, but you can get close enough. Another girl, I like all these stories, but she, in a village in northeast Thailand, this is a very great story. She was in a village in northeast Thailand. She had obviously many children, but one of the children did very, very well and went to university. And then eventually went to teaching school and became the headmaster, the principal of the local village school. So they went from grade 1 up to grade, I think it was 7, 8 or something. And anyway, he was the principal of the school. She was very proud of him, obviously, but then she died, and she got reborn as his niece. And her recall was just so clear that everybody in the village, including her son from the previous life, now her uncle, knew, oh, that was my mum before. Now, everything was going well when the kid was young and a little baby playing around. But when the principal's deceased mum, now the niece, had to go to school. So on the first day at school, this little 5, 6-year-old, and she went to school, and this was many years ago, and everyone had to stand up when the headmaster came into the room, and he was carrying a cane. You mess around, you get whipped. And so everybody stood up for the headmaster, the principal, but she sat down. I'm not standing up for my son. He should be standing up for me, said this little 5-year-old to the principal. And of course, he said, stand up. I said, no, son. And even though the principal, should have punished her, he said, I can't do it. How can you cane your mum? So she was totally sort of rebellious, no discipline. She came and went, whenever she wished, and no one could punish her. She didn't learn very much at school. She had a wonderful time. Because, how could you punish or even put in detention, your mum, even though she's only 6 years of age? So it does make things very complicated. And that was a true story, this lady who just told us all these stories. Dear Ajahns, today topic on salt baby. Kindly explain the difference between salt baby, that one, wanting and indulgence, chocolate kid. How do we identify what you really need? So the salt baby was a little kid who just had this need for salt because it wasn't metabolizing it, and when people thought salt is bad and they just hid the salt, then the baby died. A rare disease, obviously. But for a little kid at that age, sometimes they just don't know sort of desire or craving or lust. This is just something automatic. And so there is something in us, which is, sometimes, like when I said I wanted some salt because I was just had gone through diarrhea and I didn't know about what you're supposed to do when you had diarrhea. I didn't know basic first aid. I just drank water, but then I needed salt. I just knew that, and so you just took some more salt. And so there's a lot of time, a lot of wisdom in our body, to know what to do when. And so a lot of times that inherent wisdom, but if it is just out of desire, you should be able to know the desire, what you really want, you need. This only just comes, you just indulge in salt because, you're dehydrated. or just you're lacking your body salts. But other times you be sensitive, and it's not indulgence, just you feel, this is weird, I feel I need to have a rest. Don't know what, but you find out afterwards some flus and viruses are going around, but you catch it earlier. Your body's sensitive enough to stop it. So actually to take, and also people were, who was it? This other monk, he was a very good friend of mine. He was in the US Marines during the Vietnam War. He actually volunteered to get tougher. He was really a bad guy. He said he used to go around in gangs in New York with motorbike chains. He called it playing for keeps. And he volunteered to join the Marines and go to the US, go into the war to get tougher, to become more of a hoodlum. So he joined the Marines, and in a firefight somewhere, he was a radio operator. He told me one of his friends got hit in the foot. They called it $1 million wound, which means he'd be cashiered out of the army with a pension, would not really need to do much, work with a hobble, but, he'd be able to do anything else in life as a veteran. And this fellow was just laughing, you lucky whatever. And because he was laughing at his friend who just got wounded, he lost his mindfulness and he got shot in the back of the head by the Viet Cong. A bullet just came because he wasn't sort of paying attention, just laughing. And this was, got to the helicopters, evacuated, and they were really tough, even the medics there, and they just told him, he said, that you had to take a lot of your brain out, and you're not going to be able to see anymore. You're going to be blind. And he sort of told me, he said that, he, under the bandages, he said, as soon as I can, I'm going to commit suicide. And he would have done it. He was like fearless, tough as anything. But apparently when they took the bandages off, he could see. They didn't know why, but he had his full vision. So he was on a pension, $1,000 a month, and it was a long time ago, so do whatever he wanted, didn't need to work, enjoying his life, and eventually he became a monk, because sometimes, what to do. And he became a good person. He's a very nice monk, very good friend. And trouble was, though, that he had epileptic fits because of the injury to his brain. And he told me, he said that, that they come out of the blue and he'd just be incapacitated. People have to make sure he didn't, swallow his tongue or whatever. And anyway, he used his mindfulness and meditation. He started becoming aware of how those fits progressed. He was really listening to them, understanding his body. And he started to catch them earlier and earlier and earlier. And you could actually trace the progression of a fit. You'd start to see the signs, whatever they were, and see them build up, and then you'd have the full-blown fit. But catching them earlier and earlier and earlier, he soon managed to get them so early, he knew fits coming, and he could actually take another course, avoid them, take other action. He'd usually just go into his room, dark, and really relax, do some meditation, and the fits never came again. That's how he avoided them, just with mindfulness, understanding his own body, and seeing them earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier, until they didn't come. Unfortunately, later on in his life, that because of those injuries, they said it was so much damage to the brain there, that it could happen, and it did happen. He got a brain tumor, and that's where he died. But what he was saying beforehand about just the way you catch it earlier, you listen to your body, understand your body, and what was a fit, you catch it so early, it's like he had a fork in the road. If I carry on like this, it's going to be inevitable. I'm going to get the epileptic fit, but I can catch it so early and go another route, so to avoid it altogether. That's fascinating, understanding, learning your body. And some of it's not indulging. You can understand it really does need some salt, it needs some water, it needs a rest, whatever it needs, exercise. It needs, to stop worrying. Feel your heart. It's weak, so just relax it some. A question of urgency born of selfishness. When you attain Nibbana, disappear, switch yourself off, does it mean there will be no more Ajahn Brahm in whatever form to help stupid persons such as myself? Of course there will. There will be. There's over 1,000 YouTube videos. There's many books in so many languages. But the point is that all the best teachings are just transmitted and they live in the disciples. Ajahn Chah's gone. Has he? Oh, it's all the people who studied under him, who understood what he was saying, then they become the next teachers. And those teachers who listen, practice, and penetrate, then they too become the next teachers. There's always another Ajahn coming along, another Sayali or Sayadaw. So the transmission, it just goes round and round and round. Keeps going on, so it never stops. Maybe they don't tell stupid jokes, maybe much better jokes, I don't know. So you'll always be helped. I know the part about being left with teachings, but it is entirely different if there's an Ajahn Brahm alive in some form who can interact and who can make them come to life. Of course there are, there's heaps of them. Maybe, not the sort of ones which you're used to, they're a little bit different. But many people, they like different types of food. Some like dumplings, some like mashed potatoes, some like spaghetti. Oh, that was the other sort of past life story which I didn't tell you. Really weird. What was this retreat last year, I think it was. Because a gentleman was actually at the retreat in Bangkok as well. It was just this retreat, I think, last year, that he had, I think it was the October retreat, he had this dream. Now we're talking about past lives, his meditation was going okay, and one of the weirdest dreams you could imagine. He dreamt that he was a strand of spaghetti. He was Italian by background, but he dreamt that he was a strand of spaghetti. And then the next night, he had another weird dream. He dreamt he was a piece of ravioli. And then when he came to ask me, what does this mean? Am I hungry, or is it trying to tell me something, I'm not eating enough, or what? I said, it's obvious. First night you dreamt you were a piece of spaghetti, the next night you were a piece of ravioli. You're remembering your past lives. You have to be an Italian to past lives, don't I? Anyway, okay. So, hoping for something reassuring, but notwithstanding at all, hoping for something 100% honest. Of course, there's always somebody comes and teaches. So you have no worries whatsoever. And anyway, isn't it about time one of you took up the reins? You've got all these great monks over Bodhinyana Monastery. And they always say, as long as the sun shines, you can't see the moon. So let the sun go down so the moon can shine. And when the moon's up, you can't see the stars. There's many stars. You may not see them, right now, but they're there, waiting for the old suns to go. New stars, high sky. You mentioned about will and said there is no free choice. May you please elaborate more on this? I'm sorry I can't do that because I've got no choice. It's not my choice, I'm sorry, I can't elaborate. It's out of my control, not my will. When you are doing your job, someone comes to talk to you. Which one is more important? It is none of them. because I'm not doing my job, no one's talking to me, I'm just answering a question. Whatever's right in front of me is the most important thing in the world. So what's more important is this blue piece of paper, which is the most important thing in the world. And the most important thing to do is to throw it away. Now, if you're doing your job and someone comes to talk to you, sometimes it's nice, to just say, is anything I can do to help? If you're busy doing your job, and someone comes to talk to you and says, I've got to focus on my job, I've got to focus on my job, I've got to focus on my job. So, get out of here, I'm focusing on my job. Because what happened was, what was that story of? It was one of the doctors in Sydney, really, making lots of money. And I think opened up his own little medical centre, specialist, and just really making so much money, really disgusting. And so he decided to buy himself a sports car, a Ferrari. So he bought himself this really expensive, top-of-the-range Ferrari sports car. So he can really just enjoy having a real sports car. But of course, what can you do with a big sports car like that? In the cities, traffic jams and speeding cops. So he went out into the countryside. There was very few policemen. And as soon as the open road was there, he just put his foot down and speeding through these country roads, making a big noisy idiot of himself. And, it's scaring all the cows and the sheep and the other beings in there. They're just really just so selfish, thinking of himself. He said, well, I've got a car, might as well use it. Speeding around. And he managed to see sort of a farmer just shouting at him, "Pig!" And the doctor turned, "Who are you calling pig?" And when he was turning around, he ran into a pig in the middle of the road. He thought it was saying that you are a pig for driving too fast and making a big noise in country roads and serenities. But he didn't mean that. He said, pig in the road. So sometimes it's good actually to pay attention to what somebody's saying. But don't just do your job. And if you're just if you're just riding a bus and there's a big hole in the road, just let somebody tell you, stop. What was it? It's amazing just the sort of people doing cars these days. There was this woman, actually didn't know it was a woman, but this car was weaving all over the road. So a traffic cop saw this car weaving. It wasn't going fast, but it was just really erratic driving. So the traffic cop pulled up next to the car and just knocked on the window and pulled it down, just lower the window. And the person it's an old woman. An old woman was driving all over the place. And the reason why she was driving erratically, she was knitting while driving. You wouldn't believe it, would you? And then the traffic cop said, pull over. And she said, no, a scarf. Oh, come on. Not a pullover. A pullover is a jumper. Not a pullover, it was a scarf. Pullover? No, scarf. Oh, too late at night, I'm giving up. If we know that a monk is not really holding Vinaya, with what kind of mind should we face him? It depends on and if it really is, sexual misconduct, or they're keeping lots of money, or they're eating in the afternoon. If it's really bad stuff, just, fine to see if you can just, especially if it's sexual misconduct, that's the dangerous, especially if it's like kids or something. You should, just tell him, please, you're destroying the good name of Buddhism. Please, just disrobe. If you want to, have family, sexual relations, whatever, that's fine, but don't do it in monk's robes. Disrobe. Otherwise, it just, you're making such bad karma. That's one of the nice things which I always liked about Theravada monks, that you could leave at any time. If a monk fell in love, and then don't have an affair. It's you're trying your very best. As a monk, now just disrobe and just go and get married, whatever you need to do. But don't pretend to be something you're not. And a lot of times say, well, you did the very best, and you did it in the right way. You disrobed, instead of trying to carry on in the pretense of being a monk. But sometimes it can be just so strict on some monks. And I'm a very strict monk. But sometimes you get a lot of kindness and compassion. There are some monks, they may not be perfect forest monks having few possessions. They may be watching TV. But a lot of times some of those village monks, they do good work in other ways. They're very kind and compassionate, taking orphans. And that's right, there was a little book written called Prat Pharang in Thailand. There was this monk, Peter, his name was, not me, and he ordained with this city monk, and this city monk would do so much good service, taking in like kids who were orphaned, kids who were just lost the rails, and really look after them, make sure they're well fed, get a really good education, and be a father figure to them. So he wasn't a meditating monk, but he had so much kindness and compassion. I've seen many monks like that. If they're honest and upfront and they're just good, they're not in it for the money or the prestige. And some of those monks, the little monks in the villages, in the temples, they may not keep the rules like I keep them, but they do such a nice service. They're very grandfatherly. They're quite lovely. So, in the years that it's wonderful if you're a forest monk and you just keep your rules, you don't have money, and you live reasonably simply, and you serve a lot. It's wonderful to have that. But the monks who don't keep the rules, if it's really badly not keeping the rules, then they should leave. Is there any sutta reference to suggest the five senses are turned off in jhana? Of course there are. Many of them. One of them is they say that they call it the thorn or the arrow which can penetrate the first jhana. The only one which can is like sound. All the other ones are just shut off from the jhana. But it's the sound which can just get in. Have you ever noticed that it's through sound is the way that you bring people out of a coma by talking to them? They hear sound first of all. There was that auntie of Angie Monksfield, her auntie, that she told a wonderful story about her being in a coma. Forget what the disease was, but she was in a coma for quite a few days or weeks, I think. And it was hearing, she said, a temple bell, the ding, ding, ding of a temple bell. And that actually brought her out of this very deep blackness back into her body. That's how she described the first part of coming out of the coma. It was sound which brought her out. But she still couldn't speak. And that's where she was in her body. She could hear and feel and see, but she couldn't respond. And that's when she witnessed a conference with her 3 or 4 sons and the doctor. And it was where the doctor said, look, your mother is gone. There's no hope. She's in a coma. It's just the life support keeping her going. Can we turn off the life support? She heard this. She was alive, but she couldn't say anything. And so, the Chinese tradition, the eldest son had to make the decision. And so, the other 2 youngest sons, passing the buck, you decide. Oh, I can't, this is our mum. No, you decide. It's your job. So they didn't want to make a decision, so it was up to the eldest son. And the eldest son was thought for a moment, and all that time, the mum was just willing him, son, I'm alive, I'm alive. But she can't make that known to the mum. And then she was, imagine just not excitement, fear, but no tension. You don't know what the outcome is going to be, and you can't influence it. You know, it's like, the toss of a coin. It's like when you open up the letter, from the lottery, whether you won or not, whether you got the job or not, or you got the letter from the doctor with your biopsy report. This was life and death. What's my son going to do? He said, it's really on the edge. And the son said, give her another day. Thank you, son. And that's all she took. After another 24 hours, she could start moving her toes or something. And they realized that something was going on. And she made full recovery. It took a long time. They're learning how to walk again, learning how to use her mouth and do stuff. Amazing little story, of what it was like. But what I remember, the reason I say this story now is that the bell brings her out, sound. It's one of the reasons why you may be fast asleep. And the bell will take you out of your sleep more than anything else. Because that is our brain, our mind gets penetrated by sound. Maybe it's something which is evolved in us, the sound of the tiger coming up or the thief coming into the house. And I think also that somebody told me this, I'm not sure if it's true, but actually this was the Death and Dying conference and over in Singapore, and they were saying that just sometimes, how do you know if a person's dead or not? They can actually open up your eye and put the light in it, see if that moves, but they still do shouting in people's ears to find out if there's any response. Because that is what the Buddha kept on saying, this is the one sense which can actually get deep inside. And so that's when the sound can, not always. So that was one saying the sound is totally gone in the jhanas. And obviously you've got your eyes closed, your body is just not feeling anything. That's one. And the other one is, obviously that's what it means. They call it viviceva kamehi. Vivicha means like aloof, separated, and the awa is like intensified, totally apart from this thing called K-log AMA. Some people, it doesn't say this, they interpret it as sensory pleasures. It doesn't say that, just the five senses. So that's what we're apart from, totally apart from the five senses. And people who say sense pleasure, well, we know that jhanas is really pleasurable, so it can't be any of the senses because it's pleasurable and you're supposed to be apart from sensory pleasures at the least, but it means apart, separated from the five senses. That's what happens in the jhana. That's why people who get into jhanas, pat them on the shoulder, they can't feel it. Hey, lunch! You can't hear it. Can't feel anything. That's why it's such a beautiful release. But you're perfectly aware. But not of the outside, of the inside. There's many sutras. That's just one or two of them. Dear Ajahn, would you please give me some exercises to develop my letting go muscle? Oh, so you want homework? Okay, I'll give you homework, and please have the homework on my desk by tomorrow morning after breakfast. I used to be a teacher, I just can't do that anymore. The exercise to develop my letting go muscles. I'd like to start this new habit here while I'm on retreat outside the meditation center. Much gratitude. Okay, you want to do some starting the letting go muscles. So one of the ways to let go is that over in the kitchen we have got what's called a letting go box. The donation box. Let go. That's where you start. Number 2. letting go muscles. One thing, you can take a piece of paper like this and just do the line down the middle. On the left side, all of your terrible qualities, all your bad, your laziness, your bad breath, your, what else have you got? I can find out, write them all down there. All the things you don't like yourself. On the other side, all the things you like about yourself, nice qualities. Know what you do? The left side, the bad things, they're the first to go in the bin. The right side, stay with the nice stuff for a little while. Let go of the bad stuff first of all. Then when you're happy, the right stuff too. Nothing left. Delete. It's called letting go. The other thing you can do for letting go, because we have seen many people with their iPhones around. You know why they're called iPhones? I for idiot. Sometimes they're called cell phones, and you've got bars on them. Have you got the message? Cells and bars. You're imprisoned by your cell phone. And you think the more bars I have, the more freedom I have. No roaming at all. You're imprisoned in bars. So that's the next thing to do, to let go. Turn off your mobile phone for the rest of the retreat. Turn it off. If you want to, you can actually hand it to me, and I'll give it back to you after the retreat is finished. Are you scared? It's important. My daughter, I've got the football. That's not important. So what you can do, before you hand it over to me, you can actually, anyone who's really important to you, you just tell them, if there's anything happens, they'll be offline, please, just the telephone number of Jhana Grove, and it's 61, isn't it? It's the Australia, 895253314. They get a message coming in, and then we give you a mobile phone back and you can make that message. But it means that you'll feel safe. You don't have to sort of answer your mobile phones. In fact, you can be free of it. Let it go. Challenging it. Can you do that? Is it possible for non-Buddhists to attain the stream winner? Of course it is, because sometimes they don't know who's a Buddhist, who's not a Buddhist. But non-Buddhist, Buddhist, as long as you practice the Eightfold Path, then it happens. Dear Ajahn, is that too hard and you know you can't sleep tonight? Oh, should I give up my mobile phone to Ajahn Brahm, or should I do it? You don't need to give me the password. I won't check up on what you've been up to. Dear Ajahn, you explain how to stop the mind chattering through a plastic bottle simile. I only got 50% of it. Can you kindly explain again? Okay, well, it's only got 50%. That's pretty good. So you only chatter half as much as you did before? You only got 50% of the... So what you do chattering is not chattering. This is about insight, innovation, seeing deeper than anyone else has seen before. So hold up something, what is it? After a while, you run out of labels. And when you run out of labels, you can still actually see more things, deeper things, things you've never seen before. That is where you get innovation from. Have you seen a ghost yourself? Oh yeah. I've seen a Kwailo. What does Kwailo mean? Sometimes it's called devil man, but sometimes they call the ghost man. You've seen a Handuk. Oh. That's a Thai word. So anyway, the ghost. the floating mind or floating soul still can't get clarity of thought on this, kindly enlighten us on this. If not important, please leave it. Because if I talk too much about ghosts and people, they just sometimes can't go to sleep tonight. But don't worry, ghosts can be very helpful. There was the ghost who, that's why some of you know Bianca, who usually looks after the retreats when I do those retreats here. And her partner, a fellow called Ron, he was a builder working just as a labourer on a building site in Mount Lawley. That's just to the north east of Perth, only very close, in a suburb, renovating an old house. And because he was a labourer, all the rest of the builders had left to go away for the weekend. And he was on the building site by himself, cleaning up. And as he was walking past the side of the house, he heard the sound. Put your hand under here. Put your hand under here. Very spooky. No one around. So he thought he must be imagining it. But then he heard it again. Put your hand under here. It's clear. And so what did he do? He put his hand under the house where the ghost told him. This is not a joke, this is true. Exactly where he put it. And he felt underneath there was a tin box, like the old tin, the cans, just with a lid on it. And he pulled it out from underneath the house, and it had thousands of dollars of cash inside. It was the previous owner had hid the money there, who didn't want to declare it to the tax office. And this fellow, Ron, was a very good, kind person, and the ghost decided, you should have the money. And so he took the money, and that's where he got the deposit for his first house in Perth. Because he wasn't afraid of ghosts. The ghosts were very good to him. So if it's in many old places in Hong Kong, there's many old places in Indonesia. So, and there's many people don't like paying taxes and hide their money under the house. So just the next time that happens, if you're going past the spooky part of Hong Kong and you hear the sound, put your hand under here. Please, put your hand underneath there. And of course, because you got the instructions from here, 10% has to go to Jhana growth. Commission. Come on, business. Okay, anyway, oh my goodness. There's Ajahn, how does someone who has had deep depression approach meditation? What should they do when they get scared of their mind? Suggestions, please, with oodles of metta. Exactly. Give it with oodles of metta. Your mind, oodles of metta. And just have a bit of reassurance. Eventually, I hope I'm brainwashing you to realize there's nothing to fear, so you get a bit scared of your mind. Just be kind, just relax. Low energies. After a while, the energies come up, come up, come up, come up, come up. And the deep depressions disappear. So, if you have deep depression and you do some meditation, just be positive, be safe. And know that no matter how deep the depression is, it does pass. Always does. When the deep parts of depression, just make sure that you hang in there, and then you rise up. And once you are out of the depression, which people do, then always remember afterwards why. And it always passes. This too will pass. I've seen people gone through some terrible things in their life, and just really just wondered how they're going to sort of survive. But they do. Weeks, days, then afterwards they're happy again. Depression does not last. My father was having dementia and had lots of hallucinations. I wasn't sure if he can understand my brother's wife was pregnant, but he asked my brother if he can be his baby. Afterwards he suddenly had a stroke and was passed away 10 days before my brother's baby was born. Is it possible that reincarnation can be happening in just 10 days? It's very unlikely, but it can happen, but it's unlikely. It usually takes much more than that. The baby's probably already in the womb, and so it can't be dislodged. But sometimes it does happen. It takes at least a couple of months as the consciousness has to enter into the woman's womb when the parent had sexual intercourse. No, it doesn't enter then. It's afterwards, when there's a viable baby in there. So, that's why in Thailand they say that you can count. You have 20 years, 20 years minimum before you can become a monk. 20 years of age. And Stephen, you're one to ordain soon. Are you over 20? A few times over. So that's why usually, but there are some cases, they're rare. So what happens, it's almost like the person is about to give birth, and then the baby somehow dies or leaves, and sometimes, but the body is still viable. So a new stream of consciousness can go in there. That's very rare. I did this yesterday. What is the difference between wanting and will? Thanks. One is part of the other. Dear Ajahn, do you get angry? Who wrote this? I'm going to find out who wrote this. That isn't. Anger doesn't get you anywhere. If you get angry and shouting at somebody, even if you're trying to play a game and just play a role, the person only sees the anger. They don't see why you're being angry. It doesn't work. For example, with novices in monastery, when things get done repeatedly in the wrong way, of course, they always get done the wrong way. They don't get the way I want them to do. I could do them much better myself. And so you say, get out of the way, I will do it. And then you get no rest at all. So instead, let people do it. Is it important that we get things done the right way, or that we have happy monks and novices in a monastery? Which is more important? People or things? And to me, people are always more important than things. One of those sayings of Ajahn Chah, he told me, in his life he'd built many monasteries, he'd only built a few monks. That's what he told me. I thought, people are more important than things, more important. So yeah, we try and get the dishes done cleanly, but not so people can't stay in this place. We want to make sure that people are respectful of one another, they're quiet, but not to the point that that you have to blackball some people and say you can't come and stay here. People are always much more important than things. This place is for you, not you're here for it. So this is your place. So people, number one. Ajahn, will higher beings give their advice via human being and medium? They give it to you. Put your hand under here. Put your hand under here. Yeah, so sometimes you can hear that. Being gives their advice via human being medium. If they're higher beings, it means that they're still not that high. You don't know how high they are. Sometimes they give bad advice. Through mediums. never trust a poor medium. If they can't tell their own fortune and are wealthy, well, they can't tell yours either. Mediums. You know, it's my birthday coming up soon, next month. And people say, what can you get a monk? Not a monk who has everything, a monk who has nothing, who wants nothing. And so people just say, what can we do for this monk? You know, give him something. He's been really nice to us. How can we get him something? And this Malaysian man, had this really, a very smart guy, said, I will get Ajahn Brahm's horoscope from one of the best mediums in Perth. So he paid for a horoscope, you know, not just reading it from the newspapers, a professional. You know, so he wanted the date and time of my birth as best I knew it. And he paid a lot of money to get my horoscope read. It was a few years ago. And so on my birthday, he proudly came up and said, I paid a lot of money for this. If you don't mind, I would like to read out the horoscope for you in the next 12 months. And yeah, this was not sort of just an ordinary person. This was the person who did the horoscope was very, very well done. Very expensive to get in these highly professional horoscopes. Spent hours researching everything. And it started off. For Ajahn Brahm, born on 7th of August 1951, I think it was about 5:30 in the afternoon or something. He said, this year will be a wonderful year for romance. And that was the end of any belief I had in horoscopes. And obviously it didn't work out. I'm still a monk. Lastly, I know there are proofs of rebirths, reincarnations, but how do we know the enlightened ones really don't get reborn? There's only one way. Get enlightened and prove it for yourself. It's called Ehipasiko, come and see. Bachatang we ditabo when you heat, to be experienced every wise, in this case enlightened one, for yourself. See what happens. So anyway, and if you find it's not true, you get enlightened and you come back again, you can come and ask for your money back. All those donations and ang paos and licenses you've given over the years, and you say, I demand my money back. I always say that, you know, in all my books, that's what Nahandika did. And I say over here, this, you know, even in here, you know, you have always a money back guarantee. That is usually given. If you're not satisfied with any of the teachings or any of the books or anything, even the food, the accommodation, you're always allowed to ask for your money back. Promise. You're always allowed to ask. You won't get it back. That's not part of the promise. You are allowed to ask for your money back. Okay, enough. Here we go. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Hee hee hee. Okay, hope you enjoyed. Question night, or is it sort of entertainment night? Fun and games, jokes. Hopefully at least you go to bed with a nice smile on your face.